globe, and the heliocentric model of the solar system. What a truly amazing accomplishment of man. It took the collective efforts of some of the greatest minds of all time, over 2,000 years, to invent this model. It was a reverse-engineered masterpiece. Every objection to the model always met with just another cleverly disguised reverse-engineered explanation. For example, the lacking stellar parallax was rationalized by the stars being trillions upon trillions of miles away. A bunch of zeros were added to the end of their numbers to explain away what any common sense would refute. What these men did was invent a dual system of astronomy, a second model of the universe that can explain everything we observe, a model built on perfected mathematics that have no actual relevance to the truth. As George Orwell once wrote in his prophetic book, 1984. "What are the stars?" said O'Brien indifferently. "They are bits of fire a few kilometers away. We could reach them if we wanted to, or we could blot them out. The Earth is the center of the universe. The sun and the stars go round it." When we navigate the ocean, or when we predict an eclipse, we often find it convenient to assume that the Earth goes round the sun, and that the stars are millions upon millions of kilometers away. But what of it? Do you suppose it is beyond us to produce a dual system of astronomy? The stars can be near or distant, according as we need them. Do you suppose our mathematicians are unequal to that? Have you forgotten doublethink? These men invented a dual system of astronomy, and these men marveled at their accomplishments. Finally, we shall place the sun himself at the center of the universe. The globe, heliocentrism, the Big Bang Theory, evolution, all pseudoscientific lies taught to us as fact, and we are taught lie after lie after lie. They need to keep us completely ignorant and uninformed. The globe, and the heliocentric model of the solar.
Not no money marketing scheme, nigga. Yeah. Open it up. Open up the economy. Yo. Like and share if you care. Shout out to everyone in the chat room. Yes, yes.
So much easier for our country if we had a press that told the truth.
The Earth is flat, whether it's we didn't land on the moon, whether it's we didn't land on the moon. The Earth is flat.
Looks incredibly flat.
To make sense to you.
That's rational.
And I've tweeted that before.
I was 5 years old, this is what I wanted to do.
Do you remember first having that thought and why?
Oh yes, I was in first grade class, and our principal came out and stopped our class and pulled out this old black and white television set and turned it on and said, "This is history about to start, and you need to be present and witness this at the start of history about to be made." It was the Apollo 7 mission, and it was the first of the manned missions to the moon. And I remember watching that, and I already wanted to be a pilot and wanted to fly airplanes. And looking at that rocket lifting off from the pad and heading off into the sky, thinking, boy, can I be a pilot and do that? And I remember my dad telling me, oh yeah, you can do both those. And after that, it was just done. That was where I was headed. This match patch here was basically signifying the construction of the International Space Station. We have on the corner there this torch. It's the flame of knowledge, and it signifies education, that torch of knowledge being passed from generation to generation in honor of Krista McAuliffe, who had gone up beforehand.
We're at 32 minutes till launch. You were just in this hot seat.
At this point, honestly, I was probably asleep at 32 minutes prior to launch. CERN was sleeping through the communications check, and I told Barbara the primary mission during countdown was to slap me to make a communications check. With me on the middeck, we're all asleep.
Astronaut of the European Space Agency, Italian nationality. Before becoming an astronaut, I was a pilot or a test pilot. And before becoming a test pilot, I was a scientist. Space is the future. So it is very important for children to continue to use, every time I interact with students, and the possibility that space will give to us. I have a say for them. Every time I interact with students or even children, I use an Italian expression. I will now use Italian and then I will translate. I used to say, a piccoli passi verso il futuro. In translating, this means small steps. The NASA Italian version is called Hesperia, an old Greek name that it was used by the Greeks to identify Italy. In fact, you could see the red and the white that represent.
Of course, it's a NASA patch. This is 16 mission which flew in December. If astronauts happens to be your dream, you should be doing something in the area of science, technology, or medicine, mathematics, something like that. More than kind of show that you're good.
We have a go for main engine start. T-minus 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Booster ignition and liftoff of Discovery, hoisting harmony to the heavens and opening new gateways for international science. Discovery has cleared the towers.
Houston now controlling.
Roll program.
Roger, roll, Discovery.
Discovery's roll maneuver is complete. Is now in a heads-down position on track for its flight to the International Space Station. Discovery 7 miles downrange at an altitude of 2 statute miles. Flying at 600 miles per hour.
T-minus 16 seconds. Sound suppression water system has been activated, protecting Discovery and launch pad from physical energy. We have a
countdown to Commander.
4, 3.
Oh my God.
1. Booster ignition and liftoff of Discovery.
Woo!
And of course, you have Discovery, the shuttle that will be carrying up Node 2, which has the name of Harmony. And several students across the country came up with this name, and it was then selected, and it's very appropriate. It's going to be, Harmony will be joining together Columbus and the GEM, the Japanese module. So it's very appropriately named. It's represented by these red points on the star to the gold area. And so that's what's symbolized there. Again, you see the astronaut symbol with the three, the Apollo and Mercury and Gemini programs coming together with that lower Earth orbit swoosh. and of course all the names of the folks that are involved with this flight. So that's the STS-120 patch. So this is my class patch, and it was designed by one of my classmates. It captures a lot of different things. Of course, we have the Earth and then looking to return to the moon and go on to Mars. We have the astronaut symbol, which shows the 3 programs that originally started, Mercury, Gemini, and Apollo, coming together. The lower Earth orbit is the loop, and we're going to space. The background constellation, there's a star for each member in my class, and it is Carina, which is the keel of the boat of the Argonauts. So the Argonauts explored the ocean, the astronauts explore the sky. Of course, we have the book because there were 3 teachers in my class, but all of us pursued knowledge, and then that's what got us the jobs. We have a star here on Florida because we've launched currently from Florida. And we also made sure to keep Japan in our world map because 3 of the astronauts in my class were from Japan. Also, you can see the 2 flags then, the Japanese and the American flag. And in Latin it says, we come for the sake of exploring, teaching, and inspiring. Things that challenged me was math and science. They weren't the easiest subjects for me to grasp, but I worked really hard, and they interested me because they challenged me. So I hope kids will choose things that make them think hard, that they love, and then go pursue it. And in their pursuit, there'll be times when things are not easy, but just to keep after it because it's worth the work, it's worth the challenge.
Yeah, you never know what's going to happen around the corner. You just never know. I never really thought about what it might be like to be a National Geographic photographer, for example.
Real nice. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Yeah, that's right. Okay, we got you backstage to it now. Oh yeah.
The Earth is flat. 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 If the Earth were flat, the Earth is flat. The Earth is flat.
In order to sustain a middle-class lifestyle in this increasingly flat and fast world.
Bleep, blop, bloop, bleep, bloop, blorp, I am a robot too.
Never. Ever. Ever.
No, seriously, folks. But he knows. And actually, the more you think about that, the more you think about all the millions of experts we have on the telly every night or everywhere telling us how to do it. And a year later, they're wrong, or they're out of office, or the world is flat after all.
That actually is flat wrong, also. Flat wrong.
But I don't have much patience for anyone who denies that this challenge is real.
In order there, tough guy.
Went and I actually spoke to a bloke who'd sailed around the world, and he said that the world was round. Seriously.
Okay, but I got a serious point.
Can I go to the toilet, please?
Tell us. I want to know what you think.
And that's that. Unless the world is flat. Unless the world is flat. Unless the world is flat.
Get it.
I'm walking alone, the streets are empty. The only thing I can see is my own silhouette. I'm getting stronger, step by step. The clock is ticking, but there's no time for regrets. I've been flying from town to town, from London to Taiwan. So we are heroes tonight. We will fly above the sky. We are heroes tonight. Yeah. We are heroes tonight. We will fly above the sky. We are heroes tonight.
The dramatic achievements in space which occurred in recent weeks should have made clear to us all, as did the Sputnik in 1957, the impact of this adventure on the minds of men everywhere.
We as a society have become grossly fragmented through social media, electronic appliances, the stress of what we've experienced, and this leads into this whole issue of mass formation psychosis that Matthias Desmet at the University of Ghent has promoted. What happened in Germany in the 20s and 30s? You know, very intelligent, highly educated population, and they went barking mad. And how did that happen? The answer is mass formation psychosis. When you have a society that has become decoupled from each other and has free-floating anxiety and a sense that things don't make sense, we can't understand it, and then their attention gets focused by a leader or a series of events on one small point, just like hypnosis, they literally become hypnotized and can be led anywhere. And one of the aspects of that phenomena is the people that they identify as their leaders, the ones typically that come in and say, you have this pain and I can solve it for you. I and I alone, okay, can fix this problem for you, okay? Then they will follow that person through, it doesn't matter whether they lie to him or whatever. The data are irrelevant. And furthermore, anybody who questions that narrative is to be immediately attacked. They are the other. This is central to mass formation psychosis. And this is what has happened. We had all those conditions. If you remember back before 2019, everybody was complaining, the world doesn't make sense, blah, blah, blah. And we're all isolated from each other. We're all on our little tools. We're not connected socially anymore, except through social media. And then this thing happened and everybody focused on it. That is how mass formation psychosis happens, and that is what's happened here. Now there's ways to get out of it. Matthias's recommendation is you got to get people to realize that what we've got is a situation of global totalitarianism. In his experience in Europe, making people realize there's a bigger threat than can cause a separation psychologically in this fusion, this hypnosis that has happened. The problem is, then you're just substituting a bigger boogeyman for the current one. And somebody else can come in and manipulate that. The real problem, and it gets back to your core point.
In 1492, most people thought the world was flat.
except for one man, Christopher Columbus. He was convinced the Earth was round, and that it would be possible to circumnavigate it. He knew he could sail across the ocean to India and bring back spices to Europe, but he had a hard time convincing anyone to fund his expedition. Everyone thought he would sail off the edge of the world. Eventually, he was able to convince Spain to give him 3 ships, and he set sail. After crossing the Atlantic, Columbus discovered America and proved the world was round. You probably heard this story before, especially when you first learned about Columbus. In fact, it might be all you know about him. The reality is, there are several factual and logical issues in this story. Of the Earth was known. This was why nobody wanted to fund Columbus, not because they thought he would fall off the edge of the world, but because they knew the distance was too great and that he'd never reach India. Columbus was actually the one who was wrong, because he believed the Earth was smaller than it really was. Everyone else was right. If there wasn't a continent in the way, Columbus and his crew would have died before ever reaching India. The second thing that this story gets wrong is Columbus discovering the Americas. The Vikings had traveled to North America around 500 years earlier, not to mention, of course, the fact that there were people already there when Columbus arrived. These 2 facts are starting to become common knowledge. But there is a third logical issue with this story that I don't often hear anyone address. That is the issue of Columbus proving the Earth was round. Let's pretend the rest of the story is true, and let's focus on that last part. People say that Columbus discovering America proves the Earth is round. How? If the mathematical proof of the ancient Greeks doesn't count, wouldn't you need to circumnavigate the Earth to prove it was round? Columbus didn't do this by landing in the Americas. For all people knew, the edge of the Earth was just past the continent. America could just as well exist on a flat Earth, so finding it doesn't prove anything. Most of us were told the fake story of Columbus by people we trusted to give us correct information, such as teachers. Remember this. Even the smartest people can have incorrect information.
Did you know that the Earth is flat?
G'day, I'm Isaac Butterfield, and this is a very serious video. Hence why I have my very serious flamingo party shirt on. It's time we ask the age-old question again, is the Earth flat? They're called flat earthers, and they believe the Earth is not round at all. It's not even slightly ball-shaped. In fact, they wholeheartedly believe that the Earth is flat. People believe this, you ask? Well, for most of them, they just have a feeling. I just feel like the Earth's flat. It's true for me, and if listening to Triple J or watching The Project has taught me anything, feelings are more important than facts. And it's not just everyday folk that believe this. Even singer/rapper/one-hit wonder B.O.B. believes two things in life. Number one, that the Earth is flat as years ago. No matter how high in elevation you are, the horizon is always eye level. Sorry, cadets, I don't want to believe it either. Well, thanks for the science there, Bob. Being huge, and for most vantage points that one person can get, you're only looking at a very small plane of the Earth. Think about it like this. If you put it close enough to your eye, it will look slightly flat. Either it's all about perspective, or Tennis Australia has been lying to us for years. Something about this. Shaq said, "It looks flat to me," which is a great basis for determining anything scientifically, obviously. Tila Tequila said some shit about it as well. I didn't look it up, couldn't be bothered. Learning about Barnaby Joyce rooting birds in Parliament and freaking out about how scary and deadly rockmelon is. It's about time we had a chat about something a little bit different. So, over the past few days, I sat down and I did what every single conspiracy theorist of all time has said to anyone else. I looked into it. Prepare yourself, ladies and gentlemen. It's time to get woke. Here are some of the marvellous things that flat earthers believe. The Earth's not a ball, it's not round, it's not a globe, it's flat, like a plate. Think of a plate. It looks like a plate, all right? And the Arctic Circle, you know that joint with all the bloody ice and snow and shit? Well, that surrounds the flat Earth in the form of a 150-foot ice wall. Yeah. You know the massive giant ice wall that everyone was really impressed with Game of Thrones last year? Yeah, we got one too, yeah. And NASA spends billions of dollars every year defending the ice wall and not letting planes near it, or letting ships near it, or letting anyone near it, because they don't want to let anyone know what's on the other side. They employ people all over the globe to make fun of the flat earthers, to try and disprove their claims, and they're called shills. And if you want to know what it's like to be a shill, you can visit my Instagram. It's @thebutsman. It's a great life. Gravity doesn't exist. Einstein, you know it all. I hate to be skeptical, but maybe that has to do with perspective. For example, the Burj Khalifa, the largest building in the world, has two different sunset times. What do I mean by that? Well, the sun sets at the bottom 2 minutes earlier than at the top. Because, well, I'm not sure. If only the Earth was round and then we could explain it through curvature. But no, it's free. There are no full pictures of the Earth. Every single photo that NASA has ever produced is up. They're all composites. They're photoshopped. They're bullshit is what they are. Oh, except for the Himawari 8, which is a Japanese satellite which takes a photo of the Earth every 10 seconds and you can access it through its website. But apart from that, they're all composites. And the Earth's totally flat. Oh, did I mention they believe the sun's only a few thousand kilometers away and space isn't real at all? See, this is the thing. Flat earthers only usually debate the average person who has no idea about planetary science. And when they start using convoluted, half-sciencey sounding terms from their countless hours of watching documentaries on YouTube about the flat Earth, your average person starts to go, well, they use 3 5-syllable words in a row. They must be right. But I guess my main question to all of this is why? Why lie about the Earth being round at all? Trust the media, the government, in a lot of different things. You really can't, because throughout history, we have been lied to countless times. Take, for example, the sugar industry. In the 50s, the sugar industry paid off scientists to tell the government and then tell the people that sugar was not bad for you. And it was fat, dietary fat, that was killing people, giving people heart disease, causing diabetes, and making people fat. And now, 50 years later, we know that dietary fat's good for you. Dietary cholesterol has no correlation to the cholesterol in your blood. And it's sugar alongside refined carbohydrates that's making people fat and causing premature death. I guess that sort of just means you need to be skeptical. I don't know. Maybe the earth is flat. Maybe we have been lied to by our government our entire lives. Or maybe, just maybe.
Hello everybody, welcome to the new series, Flat Earth for First Timers and Beginners, where we're going to go over Flat Earth on a simple level, easily understood for people who are just now looking into it, without all that confusing science to distract them from the simple truth. To start off, we're going to look at what Flat Earth is not, what the system wants you to believe it is, or at least what people think it is, so you will look at it and say, that is ridiculous, of course that can't be the Flat Earth. We are not a disk floating in space with other round planets floating around us. It's absurd, and that's what they want you to think we believe, to turn you away from that. So right off the bat, take that off the table, because that's not what it is. And to also understand what it is not, as you look at this first model, this is what most people used to think that our solar system, that they call it, used to look like. Simply the sun with the planets revolving around the sun. Now as we look at this animation, we're looking at what is truly ridiculous. What they are actually telling us now that the solar system looks like. We are spinning at 1,000 miles an hour, revolving around the sun at 66,000 miles an hour, chasing the sun at 500,000 miles an hour, while moving sideways at over 1,000,000 miles an hour. Constantly moving through space. That's what they want you to think. And if that were the case, the stars would change the position in the skies, we would not be able to navigate by them. And we would feel the movement. You can't fall over backwards faster than the speed of sound and not feel it. Now let's look at the realistic view of what the flat Earth is. In the center of this map, you see, that would be the North Pole. And all the way around the circle on the outside, that is the ice ring. That is what people refer to as the ice wall or the ice barrier. That is higher than all the rest of the land on Earth, and that keeps the water in. And the continents in the center, those are islands in a giant lake or pond or however you want to say it. We're contained in a system, and this is what it's like. We do not move, we are stationary. And instead of us revolving around the sun, it circles above our head, going around the Earth pond, lighting up an area at a time while the other area is not lit. One area is lit, and it circles around like this. As you see, the sun works like a spotlight, and it lights up certain areas at a time, and as it circles above, it lightens up a new area and darkens in the area previous. That is how we have day and night on the flat Earth. And now we're going to look at seasons, how one area is hotter than the other, how there's summer in Australia and winter in America. If you look at this first one, you'll see right here the sun. It's in that inner circle. That's the Tropic of Cancer. That's a circle that the sun follows around. And as you notice on that circle, it goes above the United States. Well, when it's above the United States, it's the summer in the United States. And on the second one, you see that outer circle. That's called the Tropic of Capricorn. It migrates between the two tropics. And when it's on the outer one, it goes around and you'll see that circle goes over the top of Australia. And that would give Australia its summer, as we would have our winter, migrating back and forth. You'll notice in the sky as you look out in the United States at your winter, the sun is farther away and the summer is directly over your head. You can see that for yourselves as you take a look. Now the whole system is contained within a dome. We are all underneath it. No one can go through the dome. We are all within this system and everything works within that system. We are not in a dome floating in space like this with the sun outside the system. We are in a contained system with a dome on the outer side, the Earth on the underneath side, and the sun and the moon rotating within the system. And that's how the flat Earth works. And just like always, this will only lead to more questions, and that's fine. Go ahead and ask your questions and comments. We will do our best to answer them. As we continue in this series, we will cover more ground, so please like and subscribe so you can stay updated. I hope you have a wonderful day, and God bless. Hello everybody, welcome to today's video, Flat Earth for First Timers and Beginners, Episode 2. In the first video, Episode 1, we covered what the Earth is, what the Earth isn't, and in this video we're going to look at the stars above us and how they work. Now look in the center again here, that would be the North Pole. Now if we were looking up from the North Pole to the North Star called Polaris, this is what we would see. As it spins above us, creates circles around, showing that the North Star does not move, neither do we. Now we're looking at the Big Dipper, and what you'll notice, you've probably seen already for yourself, is that every year the Big Dipper resets itself in its position. That's how we can navigate by the stars. This shows us that we are not moving, and that the stars repeat like a perfect clock, right above our heads. And here's another solid proof that we don't move. These are called the Georgia Guidestones. They're located in Georgia, and they have the New World Orders on them. We're going to focus, however, on the hole in the center of the Georgia Guidestones that point to the North Star. As you see, the stars continually circle around the North Pole, and that little hole right through the rocks right there, and it's been doing that for 40 years and never moved. This shows us we are stationary and not moving, and that the stars are spinning above our heads. This is how it works on our beautiful flat Earth. Let's look at what the stars actually look like, and not what they tell us they look like. You see here, we have a Mars is what we have, and on the bottom we have the paintings that they give us, and on the top we have what you actually would see through a camera or a telescope. Planets or stars, they were renamed planets to throw us off. Now you probably remember this from your textbooks and what they tell you, that these are stars, when actually they're just paintings, artist renditions. We're going to actually go now and look at some stars that we've zoomed in on through cameras and telescopes, and you're going to see what they actually look like, not what they tell us. Now these are actually what stars look like. They're not burning balls of fire. They have energy, they pulsate, and they are close and local, and we can zoom in on them. What are they exactly? Well, we're still in the learning stages because nobody's been up there. However, we can look for ourselves, and what we will notice is that when you zoom in on these, you zoom in on all of them to the same point, same focal spot. They're all at the same distance. They're all within our dome that spins above our head, as we learned earlier. That is the beauty of our system. It is contained, and we navigate by these stars, and they are consistent. And the reason for the video, Flat Earth for first-timers and beginners, is so all that confusing science doesn't distract you, because that's what they'll do with that. So you do not have to be a scientist or a genius to understand the system that we live in. Looking at these stars, you can see that we have been told wrong, and that it is not what they say it is. So that's the beauty of our system. It's for all, a child, an adult. It does not matter. You do not have to be super smart. You just have to have common sense, and you can understand and see these things for yourself and learn about it. And as you begin to look for yourself and see the things in our system, this will be freeing. You will be free from the lie, and you will see the truth of our system, and it will open your understanding to many more things. Once these things are revealed to you, then you begin to see more things, and that's the beauty of learning about this. It's not just about the shape of the Earth, it's about the lies that have been told to us. Stars, and what they really are.
Did you know that the Earth is flat? Wait, what? Why would you say that? There's no curvature, it's not spinning, and space is fake. But it's the 21st century. Are there still people who say that the Earth is flat? Yes, there are. Do they have any evidence? They do. Today, I'll describe that evidence and some of the other ideas of the modern flat Earth movement, and then tell you what the typical mainstream science or glober responses are. Who are these people that actually say the Earth is flat? I'll start by telling you who they aren't. They're not people just pretending to believe or trolling the internet just for fun. They really are sincere when they say that the Earth is not a globe. They're also not part of the Flat Earth Society, which started in 1956 and probably had less than 4,000 members at its peak in the 90s. Instead, this video will be about people in the current Flat Earth community who generally congregate on social media like Discord, Facebook, YouTube, and to a lesser degree maybe Instagram and Twitter. They've also had a couple of conferences. This is a fairly recent movement, with most of them joining the Flat Earth community within the past few years, like 2014 or later. Okay, so what's the evidence for Flat Earth? Here are 3 points commonly cited. 1, no curvature measured, so it's flat. 2, no rotation measured, so it's non-spinning. And 3, the vacuum of space is impossible. Instead, there's a dome that holds in the air pressure. In order to present these arguments as fairly as possible, I'm going to play you some audio clips to let them speak for themselves.
You don't have a measurement of curvature, ever, in history, by anyone. We would need when, where, and how it was done. You don't have detection of any rotation, and space as you think of it cannot exist.
If you have an acumen with these 3 arguments, you can defeat the highest of their spinning ball space monkey priests. You'll reduce them to blubber.
Let's look at each of these 3 arguments in detail. First, the Earth has no curvature.
There is no measurable curvature. It's never been measured or demonstrated anywhere on the Earth.
There's no convexity of the surface. The model that was given to us, it's been shown time and time again not to be accurate. It doesn't line up with reality.
We have dozens and dozens of observations that demonstrate the curvature rate being falsified.
So they say not only has curvature never been measured, but you can see farther than you should be able to if the surface were curved. For example, here's an image they call the Black Swan, which is a still image from a video taken at a height of 1 foot above the ocean surface. Since the horizon is visible behind those oil rigs, the Earth cannot be a sphere with a radius of 3959 miles. Why is it called the Black Swan? It comes from this idea. If someone says all swans are white, you can disprove that by showing just one black swan. Similarly, to disprove the globe model, a single image that contradicts it is enough.
We falsified it. With the black swan, the horizon's actually 10 times farther than it should be.
Based on the radius, this photograph is physically impossible.
Next is rotation. We know the Earth isn't spinning because we don't feel it rotating, and rotation has never been measured.
I now claim to be able to prove conclusively that we are living on a stationary Earth and enjoying the multitude of benefits of a traveling sun.
We can also use lack of Coriolis effect on airplanes like this.
If the Coriolis effect is true, and we know it is, and if the Earth is rotating, then the Charlotte to Los Angeles flight at an airspeed of 500 miles an hour must be 1.5 hours. Must be. It's not, and never will be. Ergo, the Earth is not spinning. Done. Zero. Nada.
The third argument is that the vacuum of space is impossible. The idea of the atmosphere of Earth being next to the vacuum of space is a violation of the second law of thermodynamics, so space doesn't exist.
Anything from space is a second law of thermodynamics violation. Space is claimed to be a vacuum, and the air we breathe here on Earth would absolutely increase in entropy and fill the available space.
Therefore, there is some kind of dome holding in the air.
So we have gas pressure around us that we breathe. Didn't you know the necessary antecedent for gas pressure is a closed container?
Although if you want to get technical, space is nothing more than a concept, so it can't be real in the sense of physical reality. It's literally an idea of an area, which dimensions, which is how we measure physical matter. So when there's not any matter there, it's just a description known as another concept. So we're going to conceptually describe a concept, and then, you know, in clown world of heliocentrism, actually apply physical properties, being bending and warping, to this concept that we describe with other concepts.
There are a lot more than these three. In fact, one of the early catalysts of this modern movement is Eric Dubé's 200 Proofs video, and later a book. But I'll start with just these three. First, mainstream science says that curvature can be observed. Although we sometimes can see farther than expected, that's because images can be distorted by the atmosphere depending on the weather conditions, especially right next to the water. This time-lapse shows how much things can change over the course of just a few hours. So it's hard to measure anything useful right near the horizon, especially directly over water. Remember, we're talking about very slight differences here. If light bends over a curve even just 0.01 degrees per mile, a curved surface can look perfectly flat. In the black swan argument, flat earthers are saying that since light doesn't bend enough, it's impossible on a globe, but globers are saying that if light bends even just that 0.01 degrees per mile, that would explain the picture. And anyway, it seems to me that flat earthers would need light to be bending to explain sunsets over the ocean. Andrew Young at San Diego State has a page with more details, and he says if conditions are exactly right, it's possible to see things along a curved surface up to 750 kilometers away. Next, flat earthers say we don't feel rotation, and they are correct. But that's because Earth is rotating so slowly, at a rate of 0.000696 RPM. Yes, that translates to more than 1,000 miles per hour at the equator, but remember, we humans cannot sense speed. We can only feel acceleration and rotation. And the other rotations around the sun and around the galactic core are even less of a factor. Do you think a tiny ant standing on the hour hand of a clock would notice it moving? That hour hand is rotating at twice the rate compared to the daily rotation of the Earth. Finally, what about air pressure? Again, flat earthers are correct about pressure requiring a container, but only on small scales. On large scales, the weight of the air causes atmospheric pressure with no container required. You can verify this by measuring pressure gradients. At sea level, pressure is 101,325 pascals, but if you go up just 8.5 meters, about 3 stories high, it decreases to 101,223 pascals. That's a change in pressure of 102 pascals with no container in between. Well, the same thing happens much higher. At an altitude of 50 kilometers, the pressure is only 100 pascals. Going from there to a hard vacuum is also a change in 100 pascals. So if you don't need a container between 0 and 10 meters, why do you need one between 50 kilometers and higher? It's the same pressure differential. I like to use this analogy. How do you make grapes into grape juice? Well, you have to squeeze them. You put them into a container and squeeze. So you may think that a container is necessary for making grape juice. That's usually true, but there is another way. You could make a big pile of grapes on the ground, and as the pile grows bigger and bigger, eventually it will weigh so much that the grapes on the bottom will be squeezed and you'll get grape juice without using a container. It's somewhat similar with atmosphere. the weight of the air causes higher pressure at the bottom. So, a container is not the necessary antecedent for pressure. Gas does not expand in all directions exactly equally. There's a slight bias in the downward direction due to the weight of the air, and that's enough to create atmospheric pressure without a container. Furthermore, calling atmospheric pressure a violation of the second law of thermodynamics is just a misunderstanding of that law. I want you to notice something about the form of these arguments. You'll see that they generally say something like this: if the Earth really were a globe, this is what should happen, and it doesn't. So most of their evidence is negative evidence. Here are a couple of examples about how water should flow on the globe, or how day and night should work, or how clouds should work in the atmosphere. The scientific response is generally, no, that's not what should happen. You're either misunderstanding what we're saying, or you have the science wrong. Another kind of argument is to say something like, all oceans are flat, or water always seeks its level. It turns out that both sides agree with those statements, but mean different things by them because they have different definitions of the word flat and the word level.
A sea and an ocean, right? Everywhere you go, we see and observe flat level water. If 70% of the surface of the Earth is flat, it cannot be a ball, right?
Flat earthers mean the surfaces of oceans follow a perfectly straight line. That's just the common sense idea of flat and level. Globers say that the word flat and level technically means something more nuanced, like following gravitationally equipotential lines which curve slightly, so a flat ocean or a level plane actually curves slightly with the shape of the Earth. In other words, when we say flat, we don't mean that it follows a perfectly straight line. We're using a slightly different definition. On small scales, you don't really need to distinguish between the definitions. It only makes a difference when you're talking about large objects, maybe bigger than a couple hundred meters. So when a flat earther says, how can the Earth be a globe if 70% of the Earth is water and water is flat? I would say, I agree, it can't, using your definition of flat being a perfectly straight line. But that's not what we're saying when we say the globe is 70% flat water. We mean flat as in flat means smoothly curving around the globe. Now, you can't prove things with definitions like this one way or the other, but it's helpful to be clear about what definition you're using when you're using words like flat or level. Another word flat earthers sometimes use differently is the word believe. If you ask them, do you believe the Earth is flat? Many of them will say, no, I don't believe, I know.
We don't need to believe things. This is not a religion. As soon as you say belief, that is an immediate connotation to religion. There is no belief here. Gravity does not exist. Period.
There's a bigger cult called scientism. And they say scientists believe. Because you might as well be saying the pastor believes or the Pope believes. And then you must believe, because belief is usually tied to a religion or some kind of cult-like dogmatic thinking.
As if the word believe implies some kind of misplaced faith in something with no evidence. That can happen. However, most philosophers would say that if you know something, you also believe it. To believe something just means that you think it's true. So I find their use of that word just bizarre. Some flat earthers will also define science in such a way to include only experimental science, not observational sciences like astronomy, marine biology, or paleontology.
In the scientific method, your independent variable is the cause, has to be able to manipulate the effect. That's what you observe.
According to this, astronomy isn't even a science because the researcher isn't manipulating an independent variable that causes some effect to happen. I would say if your definition of science doesn't include astronomy, that's more of a problem with your definition, not with astronomy. Another tactic I've seen is an argument from incredulity. Do you really think X, Y, and Z happen? Well, just because something seems amazing doesn't mean that it's automatically false. Imagine there were radio wave deniers who said something like this. Do you actually think there are invisible radio waves coming from your phone? That your voice can be converted into mathematical constructs of ones and zeros, and that you can carry on a conversation with someone hundreds of miles away? You've never even seen radio waves. You've never measured them. Do you actually believe in them? And my answer would be yes, I do. This feels similar to some arguments used by flat earthers. Things that are hard to understand aren't automatically false. It's okay to believe in some things you can't directly experience yourself, like radio waves, if you have sufficient reason and evidence for believing they exist. What about evidence for the spinning globe theory? Now, this video has mostly taken a look at evidence for flat Earth with some common responses, and I don't want to go into a lot of detail here, but flat earthers generally do have responses for most of these kinds of evidence. Here's a quick sample. Here's a picture from outer space giving evidence for the Earth being a globe. Well, that's CGI. Okay, fine. Here's a picture from 1972 before CGI existed. They faked it some other way. Okay, well, here's eyewitness testimony from the Apollo astronauts. Apollo was a Greek god. Those astronauts are lying. See, they look kind of tired and don't look nearly as happy as I think they should be. I don't know how you could tell. Also, here are some parents that don't look sufficiently sad about what happened. Stop, we're not going there.
The flat earth theory seems to be making a bit of a comeback in pop culture recently, thanks to the internet's ability to lend a megaphone to just about anyone. I'm sure we've all looked on with varying degrees of amused fascination. However, as the trend grows larger, I'm sure that at some point, the laughter has turned to a nervous chuckle. They can't really believe this, right? At the same time, perhaps some of us have even begun to reflect on things. Hang on a sec, how do we know the shape of the Earth? Well, I'm happy to let scientists share our best answers from the 21st century. In this video, we'll be taking a look at how our ancestors from millennia ago answered this question. But first, a quick thanks to our sponsor, Squarespace, for making this video possible. We will begin by investigating what the historical and archaeological record can tell us about what people in the past thought of the world. Some of our earliest evidence can be found in ancient Mesopotamian imagery. As might be expected, these propose varying forms of a flat Earth model. For example, Sumerian and Babylonian depictions portray the Earth as a flat disk, ringed by mountains, floating on the ocean with the hemispherical sky vault resting upon the summits. This roof was punctured by small holes through which one could see the celestial fires of heaven. The pyramid texts of ancient Egypt, which date to the Old Kingdom, demonstrate a similar flat Earth model, with a planar body surrounded by eternal seas. It appears that concepts of this early model would also leave a record in the religious ideas of the time. For instance, the Babylonians would posit that the Earth must not only be flat, but also hollow, in order to provide space for their underworld. The Abrahamic religions also contain many references to their early flat Earth belief. Here are some common examples from the Bible. He sits enthroned above the circle of the earth, and its people are like grasshoppers. He stretches out the heavens like a canopy, and spreads them out like a tent to live in. For he views the ends of the earth and sees everything under the heavens. He marks out the horizon of the face of the waters for a boundary between light and darkness. And finally, in Revelations, I saw 4 angels standing at the 4 corners of the earth, holding back the 4 winds of the earth to prevent any wind from blowing on the land or on the sea or on any tree. These descriptions seem quite similar to the Babylonian belief we have discussed. While there is certainly room to take the religious descriptions as more metaphorical than literal, it is clear that the imagery here drew quite heavily on a flat Earth model that must have at some point circulated through the culture. And while such descriptions of the shape of the Earth would continue to live on in various forms, it wasn't long before humans caught on to the error of their ways. Let's now take a look at how they did so. But before we start, I must state that it will be very difficult to speak definitively about what people in the past thought about a given subject, at least in the general sense. The historical record is often incomplete, and when we do have data, it often favors the elite over the common folks. As we proceed, I will largely be focusing on the former of these two groups, and using them as a weather vane for the beliefs of the time. That being said, I do want to state that there are a variety of practical ways that anyone throughout the ages could have come to their own understanding of the curvature of the Earth without requiring scientific advancement. Here are some simple methods of direct observation. One of the best test environments would be near bodies of water, where an observer could look out over a large, level surface and compare what they saw with expectations from a flat versus a spherical Earth model. Ships sailing over the horizon are a great example. A flat Earth model would have them disappear uniformly, while a round Earth model would see their topsails disappear last. The latter proved true. In the reverse fashion, a ship approaching from sea will first observe the tallest objects on land. Another variant on this would be to attempt to observe a distant object like a lighthouse from ground level, or from a tall tower or mountain. As would be expected with a round Earth, the greater elevation reveals objects further on the horizon and behind the curvature.
Another common method would be to look up at the night sky. It was quickly observed by travelers that moving north or south had a rather drastic impact on what was visible. In some cases, objects like the pole star would have moved to a different elevation, while other stars might even be obscured entirely. A bit closer to home, one could look at the Earth's shadow on the moon. The projection of a flat Earth would be expected to cast an elliptical shadow, while a round Earth would cast a circular shadow. Again, the latter is true. Since our ancestors were well acquainted with the seas, travel, and the stars, I think it's fairly safe to assume that around the world many common folks would have had the ability to clue in onto the shape of the Earth. At the same time, I don't want to overstate the obviousness of the Earth's rotundity. For centuries, many ancient scholars from India, China, the Middle East, and Europe would continue to posit a vast array of incorrect models for the Earth's shape. Several prominent Greek philosophers of the 5th and 6th century BC argued in favor of a curved disk or cylinder. However, their peers would soon have a word to say about this. Among the Greeks, it was claimed that Pythagoras was the first to originate the idea of a spherical Earth. Born around 570 BC, he was a prominent philosopher and mathematician who contributed much to the early field of natural philosophy. While we don't know exactly how he came about his belief of the Earth's shape, it is likely that he would have relied on some of the simple observations we previously covered. Regardless of this uncertainty, his school of thinking influenced many that would come after him. Plato was one such individual who learned from the Pythagorean community in southern Italy. Upon returning home, the famous philosopher founded his school in Athens and proceeded to teach his students that the Earth was round. In his dialogue of Timaeus, for instance, Plato writes about the properties of the universe, stating that the Earth was, quote, in the form of a globe, round as from a lathe, having its extremes in every direction equidistant from the center. While the model here is relatively accurate, we are still unfortunately kept in the dark regarding any proper scientific reasoning, as Plato's arguments in the passage are more concerned with the geometric perfection of a sphere with regards to his beliefs on cosmology in general. Luckily, Aristotle, one of Plato's prized students, would provide more details. In his work of 350 BC entitled On the Heavens, he lays out his astronomical theory of a geocentric universe with a fixed, spherical Earth at its center. His stated evidence includes arguments such as the rounded shadow which the Earth projects on the Moon, and the change in constellations as travelers voyage to northern and southern regions. In addition, he also referenced the effects of gravity by stating that, quote, every portion of the Earth tends towards the center until by compression and convergence they form a sphere. Interestingly, Aristotle even directly addresses some of the arguments of contemporary flat earthers. Quote, there are similar disputes about the shape of the Earth. Some think it spherical, others think it flat and drum-shaped. For evidence, they bring the fact that as the sun rises and sets, the part concealed by the Earth shows a straight and not a curved edge, whereas if the Earth was spherical, the line of section would have to be circular. In this they leave out of account the great distance of the sun from the Earth and the great size of the circumference, which, seen from a distance on these apparently small circles, appear straight. Such an appearance ought not to make them doubt the circular shape of the Earth. Thus, through the work of great thinkers like Pythagoras, Plato, and Aristotle, the round Earth belief began to gain traction. The further spread of Hellenism with the conquests of Alexander and the inquiring Romans ensured that the idea went mainstream. Now that the round Earth model was more commonly accepted, further inquiries about the details of its shape could be made. One of the primary questions would be about its size. This would be answered by the Greek astronomer Eratosthenes in the 3rd century BC using a simple stick. His clever experiment involved measuring the angles of shadows between two distant points at the same time. The basic idea here was that if the sun was very far away, its rays would be hitting the Earth practically parallel to one another. Thus, if the Earth was curved, the result would be a difference in the angles of shadows cast by the sun. By measuring the difference, one could determine the radial angle between the 2 points. Additionally, one could also determine the arc length between the same 2 points by measuring the distance along the surface between them. With these 2 measurements, one could then use this ratio to calculate the circumference of the Earth. With his theory in place, Eratosthenes then went about conducting the experiment. He chose as his two locations the cities of Syene and Alexandria. The first point was Syene, where he knew that at noon on the summer solstice, the sun was directly overhead and shone down a deep well. Back in Alexandria, he planted a vertical rod at the same time of day. Using the length of the rod, the shadow, and trigonometry, he calculated that the angle of the sun's rays were 7 degrees. Plugging this into our formula, he knew that the distance between himself and Syene would be about 1/50th the circumference of the Earth. Eratosthenes then quickly referred to the results of surveying trips, which reported the value to be 5,000 stadia. Therefore, he concluded, the Earth's circumference must be about 250,000 stadia. This value was amazingly accurate, and, depending on the exact conversion of stades used, resulted in an error of only 5 to 10% from the true value. Future mathematicians would replicate the experiment, or devise other means of calculating the value themselves. Posidonius of the 1st century BC, for instance, would take measurements by referencing the position of the star Chaopus rather than the sun. Thus, the ancient world was soon becoming filled with a growing number of empirically determined data points about the spherical shape of the Earth. This would all prove extremely useful to the travelers and geographers of the period. For instance, Claudius Ptolemy of the 2nd century AD would use the data in his book, Geography. Here he introduced the concepts of latitude and longitude to create a series of projected maps with coordinates for all sorts of important locations. This seminal work would be deeply influential in the development of cartography. By the height of the Roman Empire, the Mediterranean world experienced an unprecedented degree of connectivity. This ensured that the findings of around Earth were heard far and wide. Even if the scientific reasons were not shared with everyone, the concept itself seeped into the population's general consciousness. For instance, the Roman Empire was quick to adopt the globe as a symbol of divine imperial power. This round Earth imagery can be found on all sorts of artifacts like coinage. As an example, here's a coin from the reign of Tiberius, showing the emperor's dominion over the entire spherical world. The spherical shape of the Earth would continue to dominate scholarship in late antiquity as a simple, matter-of-fact observation, and debate moved on to more advanced topics like the arrangement of the cosmos. Yet as today, there would still be individuals bucking the adopted view. Theological opposition was one particular source of opposition. The Syriac Christians were one notable community of flat earthers, while some notable adherents included Lactantius, an advisor of Emperor Constantine, who not only promoted the flat earth concept, but also even went so far as to mock those who opposed him. By and large, however, most learned Christian authors, and virtually all cosmologists of note, agreed on the well-backed sphericity of the globe. With the fall of the Western Roman Empire, however, parts of Europe did experience a resurgence of flat earth belief during the Middle Ages. This was in part due to the large-scale migration of Germanic and Norse tribes whose cultures still held to the antiquated views of a flat earth, coupled with the swinging of the civilizational pendulum away from scientific scholarship and towards dogmatic religion. However, I don't want to overemphasize this point, as the idea of a bleak dark age has been pretty thoroughly debunked by modern historians. After all, there would be much continuity in the Eastern Mediterranean, and even great leaps in understanding of the world during the Islamic Golden Age, which we'll be covering in another video. For now, this is where we will end things. I hope you've learned a bit about how far back the idea of a round Earth actually goes, and I'd love to see how the flat Earth community engages with this sort of rich historical discussion. In particular, I highly recommend that they try out the simple experiment of Eratosthenes themselves, or join in on the global experiment online.
When you feel it's hopeless, when you think that you lost, oh, I will take your hand and we'll rise up from the dust. Oh, here we go, 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 let us heal and grow. You won't be alone, we're unstoppable. Don't be afraid to show what we're going for. This is what we know. Here we come back to life, we're still breathing. Standing up, everybody's gonna see it. Oh, all you need to know is that we're holding on. Even if we fall, we will rise up and we follow the path that we believe in. No, we're not gonna stop until we reach it. Oh, all you need to know is that we're holding on. We rise up. but we just keep on fighting and we never look back. Here we go, 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 let us heal and grow. You won't be alone, we're unstoppable. Don't be afraid to show what we're going for. This is what we know. Here we come back to life, we're still breathing. Standing up, everybody's gonna see it. Oh, all you need to know is that we're holding on. Even if we fall, we will rise up and we follow the path that we believe in. No, we're not gonna stop until we reach it. Oh, all you need to know is that we're holding on. We rise up from the dust and claim our throne. We rise up from the dust and claim our throne. We rise up from the dust and claim our throne. When you feel it's hopeless, when you think that you lost, oh, I will take your hand and we'll rise up from the dust. Oh, here we go, 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 let us heal and grow. You won't be alone, we're unstoppable. Don't be afraid to show what we're going for. This is what we know. Here we come back to life, we're still breathing. Standing up, everybody's gonna see it. Oh, all you need to know is that we're holding on. Even if we fall, we will rise up and we follow the path that we believe in. No, we're not gonna stop until we reach it. Oh, all you need to know is that we're holding on. We rise up from the dust and claim our throne. We rise up from the dust and claim our throne.
An assistant United States attorney said, "What's wrong with this stuff?"
Right over there. See those twin towers? That's Lincoln and his wife. Oh, that's the Golden Gate Bridge. You can't see it because of the fog. It's beautiful.
What's this flat Earth?
The world was flat.
Everything was perfect, including the bread. So he got the idea of this frozen bread, and already he sent some to Europe, and it's very worked very well over that for some of the starving people.
The South Pole, and the South Pole, the North Pole and the South Pole, the North Pole and the South Pole, and the North Pole and the South Pole and the South Pole, and the South Pole, the North Pole and the South Pole.
I like turtle.
I'm a flat earther. Just because of my experiences and what I've seen with my eyes. I question everything we were taught in school, and I feel like it's some lies. All of it is kind of lies. What we've been taught in school don't add up, and it don't make sense to me. And the way I've come to the conclusion of the earth is flat is that when I went to the mountaintops, I seen straight. I didn't see a curve. And you're supposed to see a curve at a certain distance, and I didn't see a curve. I've been on a cruise before in the ocean surrounded by water. Again, I did not see a curve. And another reason is that even in the ocean, like the ocean has to water, when, for example, you pour water in a cup, it has to go to the bottom and find it has to level itself out. It doesn't make sense for the earth to be on this ball. Like it just doesn't make sense to me, y'all. No. And another reason is I've been on a plane before, and on the plane, when we got up in the air, it was freaking flat. I didn't see no curvature. It was very flat. And then on top of that, if we're on this rotating ball, the horizon line is we're supposed to move away from the horizon line. If we were so-called on a curve, on a ball, but when I got on a plane, the horizon line, it rose with us. Like we were level with the horizon line. I am a flat earther, so I hate to bust anybody's bubble or make them feel some type of way, but I am a flat earther, and I truly feel like we're in a, I don't know, it's just like something that resonates within my soul that is the truth. And that's how I take my truth. I do my own research and I look with my own eyes. I don't just believe anything that I see straight off. I do my own research and see how it resonates with me. I don't believe anything NASA says. I believe my truth and what I see with my eyes and what I believe in my soul. So let me know what you guys think and drop a comment below. Like and subscribe to my channel, and thank you for watching my videos. I love you guys, and until next time.
At the water's edge back in 1492. Those old flat earth theories of protectionism, of isolationism, that there is no going back. The earth was flat. Christopher Columbus's voyage to the Americas transformed human history.
I want to be clear, I am willing to work with anybody. Meeting of the Flat Earth Society.
Round, and someone else says it's flat. That's worth reporting. It's round.
We're trying to move towards the future. They want to. They must have been founding members of the Flat Earth Society. They would not have believed that.
What is fundamentally a flat Earth caucus? There's still some folks out there arguing flat Earth, policy. Only Vice President Cheney still insists that the Earth is flat.
But more broadly, we've got to move beyond partisan politics on this issue. We don't have time for a meeting of the Flat Earth Society. Treaty to sign. When President Kennedy said we'd go to the moon within the decade, we knew we'd build a spaceship and we'd meet the goal. Our progress here will be measured differently. crises averted and the planet preserved. But can we imagine a more worthy goal?
What's wrong? Nothing really. Just feeling a little small. If you have a problem, don't hesitate to ask for assistance. Yes, thank you. I'll be all right. Call 348-FUNK. Attention, all citizens. Attention, all citizens. What's wrong?
The only reality counts.
The only reality.
We're getting smarter. By hanging around longer. Time for the suffering. Time for the laughing. They won't let me die. I'll stay by your side. Let's be superhuman. Designers nothing more. Get back to the future. The designers of destiny. Psychic repression. Scabies of the heart.
I would love that. How you doing?
I'm doing fine.
That was a joke about the world being flat, right?
Was it? I bought a bus a couple of summers ago. So when I drive from Florida to California, it seems flat to me.
I see. Okay.
So you ever been in a flight and you get ready to land and you pull up the window and you look?
Yeah.
It seems flat, right?
Well.
So what did you do? So we were running a bit low on fuel.
Contact light.
Bit of a hot potato.
Here it is, your moment.
And the one thing to remember here, if you're making still water, it's always flat, always level.
Let's kick it on. How was your shower anyway? How was the shower?
It was good, yeah.
In these things,
So actually, let me finish.
Yeah, go on.
So you've had 6 months to prove to me why the Earth's a sphere, and what have you come up with?
Well, I ain't been up there yet, obviously.
In 6 months. No, but is there anything that you could say, right, Carl, I'm sorry, but I've been doing a bit of research, like you have.
Right. Now, I've got a proposition to put to you. I've got some stuff here and I want you to eat it.
Okay.
I've also eaten vegans.
This because she's going to save some time and ask questions, and the child usually is a little happier if they often feel the parents have abandoned them, and that's sort of a dirty trick. We try not to try to get through the whole exam without the child crying, which is another kind of a trick. Do a lot of that. Well, it's true. Most, and they get paid for.
You heard it here first. We're going to take a break. We're going to come right back, folks.
Something else to do.
12,000 miles of twilight. A line.
Subscribe to my channel, and you'll finally be happy.
Carp are bottom feeders, like in lakes.
No, they're like overgrown goldfish.
Rivers.
You'd love it. I think you'd be great.
Paul, do you have maybe a thought on that?
Well, I've been reading a lot about Hollow Earth lately, and I think we should do Hollow Earth sharks.
I'm sorry, the Earth is hollow?
There's people and aliens living.
Oh, come on, dude. Everybody knows the Earth is flat, dude.
Yeah.
Come on.
You've been lied to your whole life.
Okay, well, I'll tell you what. It's whew, it's time to announce our first shark trip winner.
Here's your chance. Here's your chance.
When this baby hits 88 miles per hour.
Hey, want to listen to some tunes?
I don't wear your clothes. I'm no human. I hurt you slow. By what authority would you say that about me? I'm no human. I don't wear your clothes.
It's time for the Longines Chronoscope.
The North Pole used to be a no man's land, but these are the days when, by buying a ticket on a commercial airline, our guest tonight found out whether there was any land north of the North American continent. He made that first discovery flight, and
Sex in the sky, love on
Have you ever heard of the flat earth theory?
Oh yeah, everybody up in here, good stuff. Damn, man, I wish I had some better technology right now, but my streaming services are not really popping off too great. But yeah, we're gonna start it up. You know what I mean? Realize might not be spinning.
Is being leveled. The global economic playing field is being leveled, and you Americans are not ready. Oh, I wrote that down on my little laptop. The global economic playing field is being leveled, and you Americans are not ready. Well, we went on, we did the interview. Afterwards, I got back in my Jeep to go back to my hotel, but all the time I was rolling over in my mind what Nandan had said. The global economic playing field is being leveled. And then it just sort of struck me as we bumped along toward my hotel that what he was really saying was the global economic playing field was being flattened. And then in the crazy chemical way these things happen, it just popped into my head that what Nandan Nilekani, India's premier engineer entrepreneur, was telling me was that the world is flat.
I like turtles.
Let's go. Check it. Yeah. The earth is flat. The earth has always been flat. The earth will never stop being flat. When NASA stops being full of crap, they're gonna forget the ice fall, the end of the map. I can't get my money back. I can't get my money. I can't get my money back because NASA stole it all. NASA stole all of my money. Yeah. We do not live on a ball. Gravity is fake. Yeah, and so is space. What can I do? What can I do? It's so loud. So say goodbye to what you knew about basic geography. Yeah, the earth is flat. The earth has always been flat. It'll never stop being flat. The earth is flat. It'll never stop being flat. Let's go.
– 1,500 years ago, everybody knew the Earth was the center of the universe. 500 years ago, everybody knew the Earth was flat.
Son, we live in a world that has walls, and those walls have to be guarded by men with guns. Who's gonna do it? You.
Subsides, both composition subsides. Personal experience and has nothing to do with the firmament.
Right.
That's all. So I can't explain any of that. I'm frightfully sorry.
This after-school presentation was written and narrated by Academy of Ideas. Check out their YouTube channel for more of their videos. The masses have never thirsted after truth. They turn aside from evidence that is not to their taste, preferring to deify error if error seduce them. Whoever can supply them with illusions is easily their master. Whoever attempts to destroy their illusions is always their victim. According to the psychologist Carl Jung, the greatest threat to civilization lies not with the forces of nature, nor with any physical disease, but with our inability to deal with the forces of our own psyche. We are our own worst enemies, or as the Latin proverb puts it, man is a wolf to man. In Civilization in Transition, Jung states that this proverb is a sad yet eternal truism, and our wolf-like tendencies come most prominently into play at those times of history when mental illness becomes the norm rather than the exception in a society, a situation which Jung termed a psychic epidemic. Indeed, it is becoming ever more obvious, he writes, that it is not famine, not earthquakes, not microbes, not cancer, but man himself, who is man's greatest danger to man, for the simple reason that there is no adequate protection against psychic epidemics, which are infinitely more devastating than the worst of natural catastrophes. In this video, we are going to explore the most dangerous of all psychic epidemics, the mass psychosis. A mass psychosis is an epidemic of madness, and it occurs when a large portion of a society loses touch with reality and descends into delusions. Such a phenomenon is not a thing of fiction. Two examples of mass psychoses are the American and European witch hunts of the 16th and 17th centuries, and the rise of totalitarianism in the 20th century. During the witch hunts, thousands of individuals, mostly women, were killed, not for any crimes they committed, but because they became the scapegoats of societies gone mad. In some Swiss villages, writes Francis Hill, there were scarcely any women left alive after the frenzy had finally burned itself out. When a mass psychosis occurs, the results are devastating. Jung studied this phenomenon and wrote that the individuals who make up the infected society become morally and spiritually inferior. They sink unconsciously to an inferior intellectual level. They become more unreasonable, irresponsible, emotional, erratic, and unreliable, and worst of all, crimes the individual alone could never stand are freely committed by the group smitten by madness. What makes matters worse is that those suffering from a mass psychosis are unaware of what is occurring. For just as an individual gone mad cannot step out of his mind to observe the errors in his ways, so too there is no Archimedean point from which those living through a mass psychosis can observe their collective madness. But what causes a mass psychosis? To answer this question, we must first explore what drives an individual mad. While there are many potential triggers of madness, such as an excessive use of drugs or alcohol, brain injuries, and other illnesses, these physical causes will not concern us here. Our concern is with psychological, or what are called psychogenic triggers, as these are the most common culprits of the mass psychosis. The most prevalent psychogenic cause of a psychosis is a flood of negative emotions, such as fear or anxiety, that drives an individual into a state of panic. When in a state of panic, an individual will naturally seek relief, as it is too mentally and physically draining to subsist in this hyper-emotional state. While escaping from the state of panic can be accomplished through adaptive means, such as facing up to and defeating the fear-generating threat, another way to escape is to undergo a psychotic break. A psychotic break is not a descent into a state of greater disorder, as many believe, but a reordering of one's experiential world, which blends fact and fiction, or delusions and reality, in a way that helps end the feelings of panic. Silvano Arietti, one of the 20th century's foremost authorities on schizophrenia, explains the psychogenic steps that lead to madness. Firstly, there is the phase of panic, when the patient starts to perceive things in a different way, is frightened on account of it, appears confused, and does not know how to explain the strange things that are happening. The next step is what Arrietty calls a phase of psychotic insight, whereby an individual succeeds in putting things together by devising a pathological way of seeing reality which allows him to explain his abnormal experiences. The phenomenon is called insight because the patient finally sees meaning and relations in his experiences. But the insight is psychotic because it is based on delusions, not on adaptive and life-promoting ways of relating to whatever threats precipitated the panic. The delusions, in other words, allow the panic-stricken individual to escape from the flood of negative emotions, but at the cost of losing touch with reality, and for this reason, Arrietty says that a psychotic break can be viewed as an abnormal way of dealing with an extreme state of anxiety. If a panic-triggering flood of negative emotions in a weak and vulnerable individual can trigger a psychotic break, then a mass psychosis can result when a population of weak and vulnerable individuals is driven into a state of panic by threats real, imagined, or fabricated. But as delusions can take many forms, and as madness can manifest in countless ways, the specific manner in which a mass psychosis unfolds will differ based on the historical and cultural context of the infected society. But in the modern era, it is the mass psychosis of totalitarianism that appears to be the greatest threat. Totalitarianism, writes Arthur Versluis, is the modern phenomenon of total centralized state power, coupled with the obliteration of individual human rights. In the totalized state, there are those in power, and there are the objectified masses, the victims. In a totalitarian society, the population is divided into two groups, the rulers and the ruled, and both groups undergo a pathological transformation. The rulers are elevated to an almost godlike status, which is diametrically opposed to our nature as imperfect beings who are easily corrupted by power. The masses, on the other hand, are transformed into the dependent subjects of these pathological rulers and take on a psychologically regressed and childlike status. Hannah Arendt, one of the 20th century's preeminent scholars of this form of rule, called totalitarianism an attempted transformation of human nature itself. But this attempted transformation only turns sound minds into sick minds, for as the Dutch medical doctor who studied the mental effects of living under totalitarianism wrote, "There is in fact much that is comparable between the strange reactions of the citizens of totalitarianism and their culture as a whole, on the one hand, and the reactions of the sick schizophrenic on the other. The social transformation that unfolds under totalitarianism is built upon and sustained by delusions. For only deluded men and women regress to the childlike status of obedient and submissive subjects, and hand over complete control of their lives to politicians and bureaucrats. Only a deluded ruling class will believe that they possess the knowledge, wisdom, and acumen to completely control society in a top-down manner. And only when under the spell of delusions would anyone believe that a society composed of power-hungry rulers on the one hand, and a psychologically regressed population on the other, will lead to anything other than mass suffering and social ruin. But what triggers the psychosis of totalitarianism? As was explored in the previous video of this series, the mass psychosis of totalitarianism begins in a society's ruling class. The individuals that make up this class, be it politicians, bureaucrats, or crony capitalists, are very prone to delusions that augment their power, and no delusion is more attractive to the power-hungry than the delusion that they can and should control and dominate a society. When a ruling elite becomes possessed by a political ideology of this sort, be it communism, fascism, or technocracy, the next step is to induce a population into accepting their rule by infecting them with the mass psychosis of totalitarianism. This psychosis has been induced many times throughout history, and as Mirlu explains, it is simply a question of reorganizing and manipulating collective feelings in the proper way. The general method by which the members of a ruling elite can accomplish this end is called menticide, with the etymology of this word being a killing of the mind, and as Mirlu further explains, menticide is an old crime against the human mind and spirit, but systematized anew. It is an organized system of psychological intervention and judicial perversion through which a ruling class can imprint their own opportunistic thoughts upon the minds of those they plan to use and destroy. Priming a population for the crime of menticide begins with the sowing of fear. When an individual is flooded with negative emotions, such as fear or anxiety, he or she is very susceptible to a descent into the delusions of madness. Threats, real, imagined, or fabricated, can be used to sow fear, but a particularly effective technique is to use waves of terror. Under this technique, the sowing of fear is staggered with periods of calm, but each of these periods of calm is followed by the manufacturing of an even more intense spell of fear, and on the process goes. Or as Mirlu writes, each wave of terrorizing creates its effects more easily after a breathing spell than the one that preceded it, because people are still disturbed by their previous experience. Morality becomes lower and lower, and the psychological effects of each new propaganda campaign become stronger. It reaches a public already softened up. While fear primes a population for menticide, the use of propaganda to spread misinformation and to promote confusion with respect to the source of the threats and the nature of the crisis helps to break down the minds of the masses. Government officials and their lackeys in the media can use contradictory reports, nonsensical information, and even blatant lies, as the more they confuse, the less capable will a population be to cope with the crisis and diminish their fear in a rational and adaptive manner. Confusion, in other words, heightens the susceptibility of a descent into the delusions of totalitarianism, or as Mirlu explains, logic can be met with logic, while illogic cannot. It confuses those who think straight. The big lie and monotonously repeated nonsense have more emotional appeal than logic and reason. While the people are still searching for a reasonable counter-argument to the first lie, the totalitarians can assault them with another. Never before in history have such effective means existed to manipulate a society into the psychosis of totalitarianism. Smartphones and social media, television and the internet, all in conjunction with algorithms that quickly censor the flow of unwanted information, allow those in power to easily assault the minds of the masses. What is more, the addictive nature of these technologies means that many people voluntarily subject themselves to the ruling elite's propaganda with a remarkable frequency. Modern technology, explains Mirlu, teaches man to take for granted the world he is looking at. He takes no time to retreat and reflect. Technology lures him on, dropping him into its wheels and movements. No rest, no meditation, no reflection, no conversation. The senses are continually overloaded with stimuli. Man doesn't learn to question his world anymore. The screen offers him answers, ready-made. But there is a further step the would-be totalitarian rulers can take to increase the chance of a totalitarian psychosis, and this is to isolate the victims and to disrupt normal social interactions. When alone and lacking normal interactions with friends, family, and co-workers, an individual becomes far more susceptible to delusions for several reasons. Firstly, they lose contact with the corrective force of the positive example, for not everyone is tricked by the machinations of the ruling elite, and the individuals who see through the propaganda can help free others from the menticidal assault. If, however, isolation is enforced, the power of these positive examples greatly diminishes. But another reason that isolation increases the efficacy of menticide is because, like many other species, human beings are more easily conditioned into new patterns of thought and behavior when isolated. Or as Mirlu explains with regards to the physiologist Ivan Pavlov's work on behavioral conditioning, Pavlov made another significant discovery. The conditioned reflex could be developed most easily in a quiet laboratory with a minimum of disturbing stimuli. Every trainer of animals knows this from his own experience. Isolation and the patient repetition of stimuli are required to tame wild animals. The totalitarians have followed this rule. They know that they can condition their political victims most quickly if they are kept in isolation. Alone, confused, and battered by waves of terror, a population under an attack of menticide descends into a hopeless and vulnerable state. The never-ending stream of propaganda turns minds once capable of rational thought into playhouses of irrational forces, and with chaos swirling around them and within them, the masses crave a return to a more ordered world. The would-be totalitarians can now take the decisive step. They can offer a way out and a return to order in a world that seems to be moving rapidly in the opposite direction. But all this comes at a price. The masses must give up their freedom and cede control of all aspects of life to the ruling elite. They must relinquish their capacity to be self-reliant individuals who are responsible for their own lives, and become submissive and obedient subjects. The masses, in other words, must descend into the delusions of the totalitarian psychosis. The totalitarian systems of the 20th century represent a kind of collective psychosis. Whether gradually or suddenly, reason and common human decency are no longer possible in such a system. There is only a pervasive atmosphere of terror and a projection of the enemy, imagined to be in our midst. Thus society turns on itself, urged on by the ruling authorities. But the order of a totalitarian world is a pathological order. By enforcing a strict conformity and requiring a blind obedience from the citizenry, totalitarianism rids the world of the spontaneity that produces many of life's joys, and the creativity that drives society forward. The total control of this form of rule, no matter under what name it is branded, be it rule by scientists and doctors, politicians and bureaucrats, or a dictator, breeds stagnation, destruction, and death on a mass scale. And so perhaps the most important question facing the world is how can totalitarianism be prevented? And if a society has been induced into the early stages of this mass psychosis, can the effects be reversed? While one can never be sure of the prognosis of a collective madness, there are steps that can be taken to help effectuate a cure. This task, however, necessitates many different approaches from many different people. For just as the menticidal attack is multi-pronged, so too must be the counterattack. According to Carl Jung, for those of us who wish to help return sanity to an insane world, the first step is to bring order to our own minds and to live in a way that provides inspiration for others to follow. It is not for nothing that our age cries out for the Redeemer personality, for the one who can emancipate himself from the grip of the collective psychosis and save at least his own soul, who lights a beacon of hope for others, proclaiming that here is at least one man who has succeeded in extricating himself from the fatal identity with the group psyche. But assuming one is living in a manner free of the grip of the psychosis, there are further steps that can be taken. Information that counters the propaganda should be spread as far and as wide as possible, for the truth is more powerful than the fiction and falsities peddled by the would-be totalitarian rulers, and so their success is in part contingent on their ability to censor the free flow of information. Another tactic is to use humor and ridicule to delegitimize the ruling elite, or as Mirlu explains, we must learn to treat the demagogue and aspirant dictators in our midst with the weapon of ridicule. The demagogue himself is almost incapable of humor of any sort, and if we treat him with humor, he will begin to collapse. A tactic recommended by Václav Havel, a political dissident under Soviet communist rule, who later became president of Czechoslovakia, is the construction of what are called parallel structures. A parallel structure is any form of organization, business, institution, technology, or creative pursuit that exists physically within a totalitarian society, yet morally outside of it. In communist Czechoslovakia, Havel noted that these parallel structures were more effective at combating totalitarianism than political action. Furthermore, when enough parallel structures are created, a second culture, or parallel society, spontaneously forms and functions as an enclave of freedom and sanity within a totalitarian world. or as Havel explains in his book, The Power of the Powerless. What else are parallel structures than an area where a different life can be lived? A life that is in harmony with its own aims, and which in turn structures itself in harmony with those aims. What else are those initial attempts at social self-organization than the efforts of a certain part of society to rid itself of the self-sustaining aspects of totalitarianism, and thus to extricate itself radically from its involvement in the totalitarian system? But above all else, what is required to prevent a full descent into the madness of totalitarianism is action by as many people as possible. For just as the ruling elite do not sit around passively, but instead take deliberate steps to increase their power, so too an active and concerted effort must be made to move the world back in the direction of freedom. This can be an immense challenge in a world falling prey to the delusions of totalitarianism, but as Thomas Paine noted, tyranny, like hell, is not easily conquered. Yet we have this consolation with us, that the harder the conflict, the more glorious the triumph.